What is up, ladies and gentlemen, but most of all, you ladies out there? Thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. We just got done watching another banger of a basketball game, an incredible basketball game between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks. This was the first game of the season for the Milwaukee Bucks and the second game for the Philadelphia 76ers, who opened with just a brutal first two games, going Boston and then Milwaukee. We just got done watching the game, and I think there was a lot to take from it and a lot of things to look at. So we're going to break it down a little bit and talk about this game, because I think both sides, we saw some things that I think were interesting and will be interesting to watch as we go forward in this season. So we're going to take about 3 to 6 minutes to talk about each of these basketball teams. So let's get straight into it. But first, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. You see, we're so close to 500 subscribers, and I'm so pumped to get there. Appreciate all the support, so let's keep grinding. You see, I'm releasing videos every night. This is how it's going to be all season. We're going to be talking about the games. We're going to be analyzing the games, not just hot take stuff. We're going to be actually breaking down some of the things we saw in the games. Let's start with the Philadelphia 76ers, because I think that this is the bigger storyline from the first two games I've watched this season for the Sixers. I went into the season, and when I was trying to pick my finals team from the Eastern Conference, I was kind of torn between the Bucks and the Sixers. And obviously tonight, Chris Middleton was out, which is a massive piece for the Bucks. So keep that in mind when we're talking about this. But the Philadelphia 76ers, I thought, were going to be a legitimate threat. And I thought that this was going to be the year that Joel Embiid won MVP. Now, the reason that I thought the Sixers were going to be good is I thought Tyrese Maxey would take a step forward. I thought Harden would improve because he seemed really dedicated this offseason. And they added PJ Tucker and Daniel House, as well as, what was the other guy they added? DeAnthony Melton, who I like. So you added 3 rotation players, and theoretically a couple of your guys should only improve. So, and especially after all that Ben Simmons drama last year, you'd think that having a full offseason with this squad, they could get back on track. Now, obviously very early in the season, so what we take from these games is kind of just we start to try to look at trends. We start to look at things we're noticing, maybe some holes, things that they can fill. And obviously we're talking about this, assuming that there's obviously going to be trades and transactions and things of that nature that happen later on, but team as currently constructed is how we're going to break it down. This team's depth really, really concerns me. Both games, their bench has provided next to nothing. Tonight, their bench gave them 13 points. You got 9 from DeAnthony Melton, 4 from Daniel House, and then nothing from anybody else. I think if you're... One of the things that I thought the Sixers were adding was a little bit of depth to their roster, because their top 4 players are about as good as anyone in the NBA when you're looking at Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and Tobias Harris. Those 4 are a great group of guys. But if they're not getting any production from anywhere else, especially because PJ Tucker's not even giving you much in the starting lineup, I don't know. I'm starting to get a little worried from what I'm seeing. They may have to be a team that makes a splash move to get a role player. And those role players will be available when we're talking about this season because of Victor Wembanyama. There are so many teams that'll start to tank, and role players will become available. So they need to try to get a guy who can come off the bench, provide a spark, provide some offense, and get a little bit of help there on the bench. I think it's going to be necessary, because you can't be getting 13 points from your bench and expect to win a lot of basketball games. And this wasn't even a high-scoring basketball game at all. Final score was Milwaukee 90, Philly 88. Now, James Harden looks fantastic. He looks exactly like what I hoped he looked like coming into this season. He almost looks back to his old self, a little less explosive, but he's shooting the ball really well to start the year. And, he was 1 of 7 from 3, but 13 to 24 from the field. He's been really efficient, had 31 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds. James Harden looked really, really good, and I'm very encouraged from what I see from James Harden, because I think the league is better when James Harden is playing good basketball. Now, let's get to my preseason MVP pick, Joel Embiid. I am very disappointed from what I've seen from Joel Embiid the last 2 games. His stats weren't too bad opening night against Boston. I believe he had like 26 and 15, so it didn't seem that bad, but he just didn't look that impressive. And tonight, he looked gassed. This is game 2 of the NBA season. You cannot be gassed. And I have a couple small problems with Embiid. I think I would like to see him play a little more in the post, but I also think he falls to the ground too much, which doesn't allow him to get back on defense. Tonight, Embiid had 15 points on 6 of 21 shooting. He had 12 rebounds. But if you're a center, 6 of 21 shooting is a disaster, especially with 4 turnovers. He looked disengaged. He looked like he didn't care. The Philly crowd was booing. And the Sixers actually made this interesting when James Harden played unbelievable to start the fourth quarter. But if Joel Embiid is not playing as that dominant center force that we expected him to be, then this team is not going to be the team that we expected. This is not going to be a team that's competing for anything if Joel Embiid is not playing in that MVP fashion that we saw last year, in that conversation. So if Joel Embiid doesn't get his crap together, now let me say this as well. When we're talking about NBA players, Joel Embiid to me is one of those guys that has kind of been a little overrated for his in recent years. When you're talking about top 10 players in the NBA, you almost always see Embiid come in at like 3 through 5. Embiid has too many flaws to me where he either looks disengaged or he's limping a little bit, or like there's always something going on with Embiid. It never feels like in big moments he just goes out there and balls. So I really hope we see the step forward from Embiid this season that I'm hoping for, but I'm really not liking what I'm seeing to start this NBA season. We'll see how that progresses. Tyrese Maxey was just okay tonight, and then Tobias Harris had a pretty poor game. So all in all, the Sixers shot 20.8% from 3. That's really tough in today's NBA. So gonna have to be addressed. You're getting no shooting off the bench. Like, Georgian Yang, I guess, is a shooter, but he hardly plays. Harrell, Melton, they got to address their bench if they're going to be the team that I thought they were going to be. But let's move on to the Milwaukee Bucks. This is the team that I picked to win the NBA Finals this year, mostly because I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is playing at a level that a little higher than anyone else in the NBA. And I think every night you watch Giannis, you're just wildly impressed with his instincts, his development, and just his raw talent is unbelievable. He hit a 3 tonight, which it actually looked good, and then hit a little midi right after. So he had a couple nice shots in a row, had 21 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists. That's a pretty solid night for Giannis. Again, you got to remember this game was pretty low scoring. And the other thing, when Chris Middleton's not on the court, the Bucks spacing struggles a little bit. That was what we saw last year in the playoffs against the Boston Celtics. Without Chris Middleton out there, Giannis was making passes, but his guys weren't knocking down shots. Jrue Holiday tonight had a very poor offensive showing, 2 of 15 from the field. Obviously, he'll be better than that going forward. Brook Lopez gave you 17, and Bobby Portis gave you 11. Grayson Allen gave you 12. So they got a little bit of production from some other guys, but their bench production gave you, let me do the math real quick, 10, 21, 29 points. So you won the bench 29-13. That's the difference in the game. In a 2-point game, if your bench wins 29-13, that was the difference. Because Giannis didn't have his best game he'll have of the season. He actually only took 16 shots, which is pretty low. But when you're looking at the Milwaukee Bucks this season, they are a team that's just going to be a juggernaut. They're going to be so hard to beat because Giannis plays so hard, and he honestly looked a little out of shape tonight. So we'll see him as he starts to get back in that basketball shape. But once Chris Middleton's back, Jrue Holiday gets in the flow, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, they got some really, really good players. Their 1 through 6 or 7 is one of the best in the league. So if they can get production from guys like Nwaro, and then Grayson Allen, George Hill, guys like that who kind of, come off the bench. If they can get production from those guys, this team's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Another thing I want to point out real quick, did anyone else catch how Stan Van Gundy was saying Giannis's name? He was like Antetokounmpo or something like that. It was wild. It was wild. They made a joke in the second half because he finally stopped saying it, but he was way off talking about Giannis. But this season has been off to an incredible start. That game was really interesting. Wesley Matthews hit a big three to take a 1-point lead with a couple seconds left in the game. So the Milwaukee Bucks are going to be a force to be reckoned with. The Philadelphia 76ers need some depth, need Embiid to snap out of whatever's going on with him, and I think that they can get themselves right back on track. One other thing that I meant to hit on with the Sixers, I'm not a Doc Rivers fan. Never have been. I've said this in multiple videos. If this season doesn't start going their way about midway through, don't be shocked if you start hearing rumblings about Doc Rivers as the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. He's been given so many talented rosters in his coaching career, and kind of continually they disappoint. So keep your eye open for Doc Rivers, because I'd be a little nervous if I was a Sixers fan. But that's all I got for you tonight. We're going to go watch the Lakers-Clippers. I presume the Clippers will beat the brakes off of them, but we'll see what happens. Maybe the Lakers surprise me. Appreciate y'all watching. Take a second to like and subscribe. Cyborg out.